In our database, we'll have a messages collection for every new message that's added. So our collection will be called messages. It'll have as a child the channel ID that the message is written on, and then that will have a child of the message ID, the unique identifier of the message that's created. And on this ID, we'll have information about the message, namely the content of the message, for example, the text hello world, the timestamp, which is when the message was created, as well as a user object, which will contain information about the user that created the message, their ID, their name, and their avatar. And we can add this example collection to take a look at what our messages collection might look like. For each channel ID, we'll have an array of messages that are added, and on the messages collection we'll have an array of channel IDs for all of the channels in our app. So we'll delete that, head back to our messages component, and we'll first bring in Firebase. So import Firebase from 2 levels up, and we'll create the messages ref, the ref to put messages on our messages collection. So we'll put that in state as firebase.database.ref with the string of messages. We want to pass this down to our message form via props. So we'll create a messages ref prop and use the render function to destructure our messages ref property from state and pass that down. And the reason for this is that we'll be creating our messages within the message form. So first, within message form, we'll also create a state object which will hold the message. So we'll have a property name of a message set to an empty string for now, and we'll create an onChange on the input to update that message property connected to handle change, and this handle change function will take the event, set the state according to the name of the input, and give the corresponding property within state its value, the value that's typed into the input. And on the button, on our add reply button, we're going to add an onClick handler connected to a send message function. So we'll create send message, and we'll first destructure from props our messages ref, which we need to use in order to create a message in our database. We'll check to see if there's a message, and only then will we send the message. So we'll destructure from state our message property, which holds the content of our message, and if there's a message, we'll take the messages ref, and actually before using that, we'll set the state. We'll set a loading property on state to true, so we'll add loading in our state. We'll initialize it to false. We'll take the messages ref. We know we need to provide the channel ID as a child to specify which channel we're adding this message to. So to get that information, we need to go back to our app file and pass it down to our messages component. So we'll use map state to props to get our current channel from state.channel.current channel, and we'll destructure it in our props object for app and pass it down as a prop to messages with the same name. But additionally, it's important to note that when we're passing props in multiple components, we need to provide a unique identifier, a key. So to give our component a key for it to be rendered properly, we'll give it the current channel ID. So we'll say if there's a current channel, we'll give our messages component the key of current channel.id, and we'll do something similar for our side panel. We'll give it a key value according to the current user value that we're passing in its unique identifier. That's an important step in passing down props this way. And now, since we're passing down our current channel prop, to our messages component, we can receive it in our state object as channel. We'll destructure channel from state in render and pass that down to message form as current channel once again. And then within its state, we can optionally receive it as channel from this.props.current channel. And now we can destructure within send message channel from state and provide the child channel ID to get the channel that we're on, the ID of the channel we're on. We'll push that onto the messages ref, then we'll set a given message onto it. But how do we get that message? Well, we'll execute a function called createMessage to do the work for us. We'll create message above our send message function. This will create an object set to the variable message. We'll first have our content property. We'll get this from the message property in state. And we also need a timestamp. We need the timestamp of when this message was created. We'll get this from the path firebase.database.serverValue.timestamp. So this is going to be received from Firebase when our new message is added. So we need to import Firebase from 2 levels up again in order to get that. Then we'll have our user object, and it'll contain 3 properties, an ID. So we need to also pass in our current user to our messages component via props, and then within messages receive that in our state as the user property, and destructure it and pass it down again to our message form as the prop current user. So we'll add user in our message form state as well, this.props.current user. And then down within our user object, we'll set the ID to this.state.user.uid. The name will be this.state.user.displayName. The avatar, this.state.user.photoURL, to get all that user information about who created the message. Then we're going to return the message and pass it to our set method. And then we're going to add on a then statement. We'll set the state. We'll set loading to false. We'll set the message to an empty string. We also want to set an errors property to an empty array. So we want to track our errors, any errors that might take place in executing this. So we'll add an errors property to state. We'll add a catch at the very end, where we'll console error, our error message if we have one, and we'll set the state. We'll set the first loading property of state to false once this is resolved. We'll set errors to this.state.errors and concatenate our error object onto it. Otherwise, now that just handled the if condition. If we do have a message, if we don't have a message, we're going to set the state. We're going to add an error to our errors array. We're going to concatenate an object with a message property of add a message. And on our input, we can show this error via the class name again. We'll destructure from state within render the errors object, the errors array I should say. And we'll use the sum array method. So if one of the elements in the errors array includes the text of message, just like we supplied in our error message in our else case. If error.message includes the text message, we're going to show the error class. Otherwise, we'll show nothing. So now, if we save all that, we open our console, and we head to our React DevTools. We go to our message form and take a look at our state. Looks like we're receiving our user and our channel, so we have values for both of those. So we can hit add reply. We get our error added to our errors array and state, and we see our red outline. Now let's try adding a message of hello world. We see after adding it, our message was set to an empty string within state, and we now have a messages collection in our database with one message with the content of hello world, as well as all of our user information and our timestamp for when it was created.